You guys back from holiday. It's time to do the Manuel Akanji scout report. I feel like this move has kind of gone under the radar or underrated a little bit because maybe Benji Pavard's gone the other way, so people feel like Inter have just made a sideways move with this. But Manuel Akanji coming into Serie A, I feel like this is one of the best centre backs in the league straight away on paper, obviously, but a move that I like, and we're going to get into it in analysis. I've spoken to some Man City fans, so we're going to analyze why Man City sold him or wanted to get rid of him, and obviously where's he going to fit into at Inter. Doesn't need too much of an introduction, but we'll go through the usual scout report stuff. So make sure you leave thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and always try to do a scout report for every new Inter signing. So let's get into it. The quick bio of Manuel Akanji doesn't need too much introduction. This guy is a Champions League winner, treble winner, of course, that Champions League, multiple Premier Leagues. He's won trophies also in the Bundesliga. 1 meter 88, 30 years of age, born in Switzerland. His dad is of a Nigerian descent. His mother is Swiss. Comes from actually an interesting family of high achievers. His dad is apparently some form of CFO, very high ranking executive. His mother is also, I think, a ski instructor. His sister is some sort of politician. So yeah, it comes from a very, high achieving family. In terms of his footballing base, all in Switzerland, as you can see from FC Winterthur. Then he moved to Basel. After that, he got a big move to Borussia Dortmund in 17-18 season, and then got his big move to Man City in 22-23 for 20 million euros. And now he ends up at Inter. In terms of his height and build, he's 1 meter 88, but I feel like you'll see, in the pictures and the videos, he's a little bit more built than the likes of Bastoni and Bisek. Similar height, but a little bit more built, but still very, very quick on the ground, especially for his size. 71 caps for the Switzerland national team. So very, very experienced player and leader that we have signed here. As it says, there's transfer market values him at 28 million. So Inter at the moment seems like they've got him well under market value, because the reported option to buy for Akanji is around 15 million euros. And did we sign a genius? I mean, going back to his family background, as we said, all high-ranking, intelligent people. He is a super intelligent man himself. It reminds me a little bit of Bisek here as well, in terms of Bisek, I think, studied or was studying for medicine until he took on football full-time. And Akanji is actually a little bit of an arithmetic genius. If you see videos of him way back from his Dortmund, I think Basel days as well, he's known to be able to do these kind of really difficult arithmetic calculations in his mind in a few seconds. So we sound a little bit of a genius, and he is not new to the Inter world. I mean, a few years back, 3 years ago, there's a video on my channel, because he was linked heavily to Inter when Inter ultimately assigned Francesco Acerbi in the summer of 2022. As you can see there, Inter extra shouts out to them, going all the way back then. Inter were linked to him already for around 15 million euros, which was the amount back then we sold Cesare Casadei for, the guy who now plays for Torino. We sold him to Chelsea at that time. President Zhang will decide whether to endorse the deal to write off the profit on Casadei, which would mean Acerbi could become a serious possibility. And at the time, I went back and looked at the video. He was one of my preferred options. I wanted someone, and back then he was 27, so he was ripe, peak age. The Acerbi thing was, of course, he was much older, but he was an Inzaghi guy, so it was kind of like, give the coach what he wants. And then Chalobah and, Tanganga. I mean, Tanganga's career has now completely tanked since then, so that was probably a good thing we didn't sign him. Chalobah has always continued to be kind of this rotational option at Chelsea. So in the end, Akanji probably could have been a really good option, but in the end, we also know that Francesco Acerbi turned out to be a fantastic coup for Inter. But since then, Akanji has gone to another level. But let's get into it. Why did the Man City sell Akanji? My slide has gone all weird there on the screen, so apologies for that. I did set it up nicely before. So I spoke to a few Man City fans, and basically the reason is kind of Pep usually has his revolutions. This summer or this last few months, since last year, there's been a new revolution coming. Pep always does, cycles, 3 or 4 years. Then he likes to, get fresh players in. We're saying this is what Inter should do, right? But of course, he's got the money to do it. So that's one of the reasons, the kind of the new era that Pep is trying to bring in at Man City, the rejuvenation of that squad from those treble winners. And technically, or on the sheet for Man City in terms of their squad, they needed a non-homegrown squad slot to balance the squad registration for the Champions League. Akanji was chosen to be the guy for that, with an expiring contract as well, to try to get the most value for money out of him at the moment. And then also, of course, technical or performance-based decision as well. He struggled with injuries last season, inconsistencies last season, part of a wider dip among players post-treble. You've seen the likes of Gundogan leave, Grealish leave, now Akanji, Kyle Walker. So, is it the motivation level or, the dip in form since then? One of the many reasons that Man City are selling a lot of those players from that treble-winning season now. And of course, as I said, bringing through that new generation of defenders now, Kusanov emerging at Man City. So Akanji opens up a space there. And again, the little concerns about his injury record very recently, when he was at Dortmund, there definitely wasn't more of a concern. Regular injuries, but nothing too serious. But at least once a season, it seemed like he was getting at least 1 or 2 injuries. Then at Man City, seemed like he got past those issues. But then last season, they have come up again, 3 separate injuries, 2 adductor injuries. I don't know if it's the same muscle or not, but little signs of concern at the age of 30. Of course, it's not the most encouraging sign for sure, and that's again probably one of the reasons why Man City wanted to move on from Akanji. And then how Man City fans view Akanji in general. As again, I spoke to a few of them, and they really like him. They view him as one of the best value signing of the Pep era. As I said, back when we were linked with him for 50 million euros, they signed him for a little bit more, 50 million pounds, so around 20 million euros. He ended up being one of the stalwarts, one of their starters. I think he was initially probably signed as more of like a rotational player, but actually he ended up being a key player in that treble-winning season with 48 appearances. And some of those Man City fans I spoke to said, after that season, you're saying his peak value, if a team comes around and wants to buy him, it would be 50, 60 million pounds. So it showed you the big improvement, as I was saying, from Dortmund. When we were linked to him from Dortmund, there were doubts about him, about his concentration levels, about his footballing, defensive IQ, decision making. There's some mistakes in him, kind of that Bozo gene reputation. But this is one of the things, in terms of Guardiola, I think he has a bit of a reputation, of course, quite rightly, of just buying the best players, and he doesn't really develop players. But I think he deserves more credit on how he develops centre backs in his style of play, and I think Akanji really, really developed very well at Man City and under Guardiola in all those different things that he was seen as to be an issue with him at Dortmund. And again, Man City fans say he provided immense experience and calmness in defense. This guy, very, very experienced in Germany, but also for the international team for Switzerland. Plays really well. We've seen him at the last Euros. He was very good for Switzerland at the World Cup as well. And then, he plays all across the back line for Man City, when they play a back 3 or a back 4. He, in the Champions League final against Inter, he started in that Champions League final as a right back. Of course, in Pep's system, he's not a typical right back. It's more like an inverted right back. It goes into midfield and things like that. But it shows you the level. Kyle Walker is a Man City legend, almost unmovable presence for them, especially in big games. And Akanji started ahead of him about that time. And you can't see it fully, the last bullet point there. Some of them think, he could have been useful to keep this season at right back, given his physicality, compared to Rico Lewis and other options they have at right back. So not all of them are very happy with this move with Akanji, but it seemed like both Pep and him had a bit of a falling out as well off the pitch. But in general, if I were to define Akanji, I think complete defender really is the best definition. I think even comparing him to the likes of Benji Pavard, I think Bastoni now can fit in that criteria because we're seeing that development over the last year or so with Bastoni in terms of, I think you can play Bastoni left centre back in, the back four, in the middle of the three as well. I think you can play Bastoni. His defensive side of things have also really improved. With Benji Pavard, we saw no coach really has trusted him to be. It's always been the right centre back of the three. For France, he's the right back in the four. He wants to play as a centre back, which is why he moved to Inter. But Deschamps of France has known him for over a decade now. Never trusted him as a real centre back option ahead of the likes of Saliba, Upamecano. I think when it comes to Akanji, this guy can literally play all roles in the back four, even as a right back. Even if you're talking about a traditional right back, not even a Pep right back, but even across the back three for sure, he can play all those three positions. And in terms of complete, we're talking about on the ball. This is an upgrade to me on the ball compared to Benji Pavard. This guy, of course, on the left, you see the stats are completely skewed because he plays for Man City, a team that dominates possession every single game, 60+% average in the Premier League, 85 touches per game. I don't think even Inter's midfielders or any Inter players ever had 85, or very rarely they have 85 touches per game, and he averages that literally for a whole season. But in terms of completion rates, carrying, progressive carrying, he's aggressive, like when he has the ball at his feet, always looking for a pass through the lines. On the right, the defensive stats don't look good, but again, completely skewed by the fact that he plays for Man City and he hardly has to do anything in terms of defensive actions aside from a few interceptions, a few clearances and recoveries. To dive in deep properly into his stats, Michele De Antoni here on Twitter has done a great job by taking actually his stats from the Switzerland team, so the Swiss national team, where he has to do a little bit more defending. It's not so skewed in terms of style of play compared to Man City. And you can see here on the right, the graph, Akanji is in blue compared to Inter's other current and now previous defender in Benji Pavard. And you can see he stands out. Spazzate is, clearances, progressive passes, medium passes, touches in the defensive third, long passes attempted, long passes completed, progressive passes. The only thing where he doesn't stand out in is the interceptions, where Acerbi stands out in. But it just shows you what type of player Inter are signing. As Michele says, they're basically another defensive playmaker almost from the back. Furthermore, it continues that, he's just more complete of a player compared to all the other Inter players, Inter centre-backs. And of course, going back to that Champions League final, sorry, Inter fans, I think this Champions League final now, we can at least talk about it. I've gone back and actually watched this game as well. Thanks to the PSG one. Now this one isn't as tainted anymore, isn't as cursed anymore. But yeah, he had a very good performance in that game against us when he was playing as the right over three. Again, you see some formation he's put in as a right back in the four, but because Stones was going up so much, it's technically a back three. But yeah, he was a monster in that Champions League final. And of course, he showed in the goal that we conceded. Again, I'm sorry, Interisti, to bring back the Vietnam flashbacks here, but he carries the ball 15, 20 meters here, he receives it. He could easily pass it to John Stones, who's out there free on the right. I think a lot of Inter centre-backs there, Pavard, Acerbi, De Vrij, they would just, easily just pass it to Stones. Of course, this was also maybe a Guardiola specific suggestion or instruction to, as soon as you get space, you drive with it. Akanji drives with it aggressively and then picks out Bernardo Silva in between Bastoni and Di Marco, with a pass that, Barella, Sucic, Hakan would be proud of. Very, very good, very, very progressive. And this is what Akanji can add an extra level to. Ball carrying as well. Shouts out to Haj Bull. I've taken this screenshot from his video when he did the video breaking down this move. Ball carrying. This guy is surrounded by Arsenal players here on the left-hand side. So not even his strong side, but he's confident enough to drive with the ball 15, 20 meters to get another attack going for Man City. Weaknesses sometimes, again, going back to the Man City Champions League final. If you guys remember that moment where Lautaro, some people say he should have squared it to Lukaku afterwards. Some people say, I think in the end it was just a poor finish or poor choice from Lauti. But it was a mistake from Akanji here, or a little misunderstanding between him and Edison that led to Lautaro getting the ball here. So again, he did improve on his defensive IQ and concentration levels, but it's still, is a reason why, he's not a starter or a certain starter anymore at Man City. More of a rotational player became over the last year or so. So not, top line defender in terms of all encompassing defensive side of things, but this is just one mistake that he made in that final, but it just shows you sometimes he does have a mistake in him. But on the ball, as I said, to me, this guy is going to be an improvement, of course, to anyone in that position. As if you're talking about just right centre back, obviously for now from Pavard. Benji Pavard in the first year, I feel like when he first came in, he came in and he almost felt like a right-footed Bastoni in the first season. He was solid defensively. It was an upgrade to Darmian and Skriniar in terms of his mobility, a bit more pace, a bit more athleticism. But I feel like Akanji coming in now is an upgrade on that, even that first season Pavard in terms of that mobility, athleticism, but also on the ball. Last season, I think Pavard wasn't that good defensively, but also on the ball, I felt like he never really added too much, which is why a lot of the times Inzaghi would bring Bisek on as more of an, even rather than bringing on a striker, his attacking substitution would be to bring Bisek on for Pavard at times. But I think with Akanji, he is comfortable on either foot, left or right. He is right-footed, but he's even comfortable, as you can see here, to ping a little ball into space with his left foot. As we said, driving with the ball as well. Defending in open spaces. This is what Guardiola wants. This is what Man City do. Defend with a high line near the center of the field, near the halfway line, which is what Kivu has said he wants to do, with the more this new vertical Inter, more aggressive press, higher press. And we said Inter need to give Kivu the defenders to do that if he wants to do that. And Akanji is a step in the right direction. Again, we still need more, but it's a step in the right direction. This is a guy that was instructed by Guardiola to not let strikers, wingers turn as soon as they receive the ball, to kill the counter-attack straight away, whether it's with a tactical foul, whether it's with, just, getting the ball out for a throw-in or whatever, just stopping the attack as soon as possible and then get Man City back on the ball as soon as possible. So that's just something that he's definitely going to add to this Inter team. Some weaknesses, I should say, to discuss, not to disc. We've talked about it. He tends to aura defend, if you know what I mean. It's not like Virgil van Dijk sometimes, because he's so, blessed athletically and physically. He's so good on the ball, very comfortable. Sometimes he feels like, almost be overconfident. Whether that's on the ball or even with the attacker in front of him, he can almost just feel like, I've got this guy. So he can sometimes let shots in. He doesn't, necessarily put his body on the line like Acerbi does to make sure he can block the shot in any way, shape, or possible. So sometimes that can be a detriment. So we saw the goal, Inter conceded the other day against Udinese with Bisek going backwards and backwards. Sometimes Akanji has a tendency to do that as well. But, usually he does win his duels more. I think he's got a 53% duel win rate. But just sometimes he can feel like he's kind of coasting his way through a game. And again, the concentration, I've mentioned this since the beginning. It used to be one of the big things about Akanji back in his Dortmund days, but he's really improved that over the years. But sometimes, with the few games that I've watched over the last couple of days, it still seems like him switch off or ball watch, or sometimes let a cross in when you could easily block it. But, we're talking about little things here. But I think we'll see some of these things sometimes at Inter as well. But as we said, where is he going to fit at Inter? I think he can play literally all three positions. Of course, Interisti, I think we want to see him tested out at least in the center of the three. We've signed him as a Pavard replacement. So yes, he's going to be the right centre back at Inter. He's going to be hopefully the right centre back starter ahead of Bisek. But it would be interesting to see him tested out alongside Bisek, him in the middle, Bisek on the right, Bastoni on the left, that is a trio of proper ball-playing centre-backs, all three of them getting to that athletic level where I think Kivu will be able to defend with a much higher line as well. And he said it himself, he's comfortable playing in all three positions. Even on the left, he can play on the left, guys, similar to Bisek. Bisek actually says he's more comfortable on the left than on the right because that's where he used to play for Aarhus. But Akanji might not be as comfortable on the left, but he can definitely do a job there if there's an emergency. It just shows you the versatility. And even as we said, in terms of the middle of the three, he has played that position for Switzerland. And if you're an Italy Azzurri fan, you must have seen that game where he dominated against Azzurri. It wasn't a hard game for him, but he showed how he can play in the middle of the three, right next to, or in front of Jan Sommer, his teammate now at Inter as well. So hopefully there's that connection as well. But yeah, very, very versatile defender. That's definitely going to add a lot to this Inter team if he stays fit. Someone, one of my friends on Twitter, you might know him as Mr. Alpha Bravo, he sent me a voice note. He was analyzing Akanji, and he said, he could even maybe play as a CDM at Inter. We are in troubles at the moment with this big dip in form with Hakan, with these issues we have with the CDM position. On Transfermarkt, they even shows that he's played some games. It says he's played 4 games as a CDM, which I don't think, again, with Guardiola's formations, they're so fluid and so they're never really what they show you on the paper or on the mobile, on the map that it says. But with how comfortable on the ball he is and how good he is athletically and physically, maybe could be a solution for a game where Inter want to be more defensive, have a Cherby at the back and then a Kanji in front of him, really block the game out. Could be an interesting proposition, but to be honest, I mainly see him as definitely a right centre back or centre back. And ultimately, what is the verdict on the move? So yes, it does feel like a little bit of a sideways move going from Benjamin Pavard out on loan to Marseille and loan in Akanji. But as I said, I think you're getting a better player on the ball for sure, in terms of definitely progressively compared to last season's Pavard. I think motivation-wise, similar how to Pavard came in first at Inter. Remember when he wanted the move from Bayern Munich at all costs, he just wanted to leave Bayern Munich, kicked up a fuss, wanted to play as a centre-back, came to Inter, super motivated. Everyone called him Benji L'interista. He was singing the Inter songs and everything. That makes a big difference. So Akanji's kind of coming in as a similar vibe because, he's been kind of like told by Man City Guardiola, like, you're surplus to requirements. So he's got that hunger and motivation to prove himself. Again, similar to how Pavard did, and Pavard seemed to have lost that motivation. So again, even if we kept Pavard, we see like there's something not quite right off the pitch with the Pavard situation, that he maybe even wanted this move to France to get back into the Euro squad, the World Cup squad for the France national team. But yeah, I think on the ball, this is going to be an improvement athletically in terms of the profile, the physical profile that Inter need for the style of defending. I think it suits this team more with what Kivo said. I think Pavard, when we want to play with the backs against our wall, defend a bit deeper, I think he was good. But if we want to play in more open space, I think Akanji fits better. Again, can play in multiple positions, whereas Pavard literally just played as a right centre back. Sometimes came on as a right wing back, but I think he hated that. So there's that as well. I think the only main concern, as we said, with Akanji is, of course, he's 1 year older than Pavard, which doesn't really make much of a difference just on paper, but it's the injury concerns, which also we started to get with Pavard last season. But if I think Akanji can stay fit and healthy all season, I think we've made a good move, an upgrade on the Benji Pavard that we had last season, and potentially even, sort out the centre back issue as well. But again, Inter do need more, but I am a fan of this move. And I think in the end, Inter might end up making this move permanent at the end of the season if things work out as I've analysed in this video here. But of course, you guys let me know in the comments down below. What do you make of the Akanji move? Is there things that I didn't mention that I think that you think I should mention or that should be mentioned? Comment down below. Do you like the move? Do you think it's a backwards move from Pavard or a sideways or upgrade? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching. Ciao ragazzi, Forza Inter and Forza Akanji.